Alright, we are back again. I apologize for having to cut that video at an awkward time. I had a little coughing fit. I'm still dealing with the after effects of the smoke we had here in the Puget Sound the last week. It got to me. I hope everybody else is staying healthy, and we're gonna pick up where I left off. So I glued down the cab, the centerpiece here, on the piece of Pellin, and we've got some beads laid out. The other items you're gonna need is actually both of your needles, because we're gonna do a 2-needle method. I've got both strung with my red thread so that you can see it in the video. I would suggest using your black or white, depending on your bead colors. And then I put a knot at the tail end of each of the threads. So they should be arm's length or less. You don't need a whole lot of thread here. Whichever one you're going to use as your number 1 needle, that is going to be your stringing needle. You're going to put your beads strung on with the first needle. Second needle is going to be used to tack down. And I find this method to be a lot easier when it comes to applique style beading, simply because the beads lay nicer instead of doing back stitching, which is typical for most earring beaters. They tend to use 1 needle and they do a back stitch method, which I can also teach you, but the reason I'm teaching this is because your earrings will turn out nicer and the beads will lay down a lot easier for you. So with the first needle, you're going to come up next to your center anywhere. If you're doing a pattern, I would start either at the top or bottom, so that your pattern lays the way you want it to. For a beginning beater, I would stick with the typical solid, and maybe we can do alternating colors on a second row. So there's my first needle coming up at the bottom, and I'm going to start with the green, and we're gonna put a few beads on here. It doesn't matter how many, whatever you're comfortable with. So beads down to the end of the string here. We're gonna pull the beads straight, and I'm gonna hold that away. I'm putting this needle off to the side here. The second needle, I'm gonna come up next to the center, not at the beginning. I'm actually coming up 2 beads over from the beginning. So you're pushing the beads down to the end. Needle is coming up. The silver kind of makes it hard to see, doesn't it? Okay, so second needle, it has a knot at the end of the tail. So you're coming up next to the center piece. You're gonna go back down over the thread on the other side, just between beads 2 and 3. And this is tacking down. Pull that. Okay. Next, we want to take your second needle and come up next to the center after the fourth bead. So every 2 beads, we're tacking down the thread from the first needle. Push the beads together. And you want to make sure they're good and close to each other. And then we're going to find the sixth bead there. We're going to come up on the inside and then go back down on the other side of the first thread. Push those beads together. Go 2 more beads over. And back down. All right, so this is my last tacking before I have to add more beads. There. Okay. So that left 1 there. So we're going to set the second needle aside, pick up the first needle. We're going to add some more beads. When you start doing extravagant patterns, this method makes it so that you can visualize your pattern up front by stringing all your beads on if you want with the first needle. Lay them down, see how the pattern looks, and then take a grouping of your beads and hold them down tight while you tack them. That's probably the best this method, this 2 needle method, is the best for patterns. See, I've got another 1/2 inch or so on there. Set that needle aside. Okay, and then where I left off was right here. That's tacked down. So these 2 I need to tack down. Push them all together. See, I left a gap there. I don't know if you can see that. See this gap? I don't want that. So I'm going to pull that thread out. Grab in the loop. So what this entails is actually having to take the needle off of the thread. And then pulling this thread back through. Rethreading. Having that gap would make it so it's just too loose and the beads won't lay right next to each other. Restring my thread. Okay, let's try this again. So I should also pull the thread from the back and come up in a different spot. But here, instead of tacking down after 2, I'm going to tack down after 3. There we go. So now that thread that I just tacked down is right up against this bead, and the last tacked thread was actually back here. So I can go back to tacking between 2. Push those beads down. And just take it easy. Push them back. See how they look. Coming up on the inside. Push them down. And we're going to work our way all the way around. When you get to the end, what I do is take my thread and my needle and go through all of the beads to strengthen, and it makes them stand up more, closer together. I think what I'll do from here is finish this row and start the second row, and then we'll come back and finish this.